Not all family members are meant to be on the board. They ask more than dictate. If both people are happy, something is wrong. Typical problem a lot of entrepreneurs face here is they expect valuations and situations to be the same as in Europe. So don't go in hard with your set of numbers. It's going to be very, very hard to bring them back. And unfortunately, sometimes the person you bring back is not a person that is capable of running the family business. You have to name certain families that have separated at the core. I think the first generation, you have a good example. The owner of all the material we get is for approaching VCs. It's not for approaching families.
When you meet Yousef Hamza today, he's the man family offices call when they need some sort of help.
I said, I'm putting $1 billion into this. We're still doing things like we did 20, 30, 50 years ago. We need to change things. I invest? Yes, I would tell them to invest in data.
Yousef has raised millions in capital for startups and SMBs, as well as he has created his own family office, which is not only managing Yousef's wealth, but also helping to manage other family offices' wealth as well.
70% I exited. I made 8x.
Was that company based in the UAE?
Yes, originally.
Wow.
Equity is the most expensive form of capital.
But it all started very differently. Yousef Hamza was not as we imagine him today.
I've never really had a label to start with. I think that's also upset my father immensely.
He was a lawyer and working in the corporate culture. One day, he met someone who changed his perception of life, was building the first angel investor network in the UAE.
And that was the start of my journey. I resigned the next day. I don't even think I turned up to work the next day. So I said, let's go change the way things are done.
But one thing is for sure, it is based on conviction.
Never taking things at face value. That's what helped me make that decision in the elevator. That's what helped me invest into certain companies that have now done very well. See the world the way I wish it to be and work towards that.
No safety net, no plan.
But I wanted to create an impact in my own way to something that meant something to me and that I knew I could make a difference in.
This conversation will be interesting for you to learn how money works in Dubai.
Doing your projections is like painting. And everybody believes they're Picasso.
I welcome you, Hamza.
Thank you very much.
Absolute pleasure having you here with us.
Thanks for that kind introduction.
Your journey seems super impressive.
So your introduction actually reminded me of the early days when I set up. We all have the expectation of graduating, then getting a job and moving on and progressing. And stability is what we're taught, right? That's the old family motto. I was less about that and more about discovery, more about learning. And I had several positions with different law firms that were fantastic law firms that were great enough to take me on board and teach me quite a few things. Throughout the process, about a year in, something was not right. Though I was enjoying it, though I was progressing, there was something that it didn't speak to me as a career path. I then was on my way to an event in an elevator, spoke to a gentleman named David Moleshead, who was setting up the first angel network here in the Middle East. And very, very early days, first few months. And I said, what is it that you do?
What was the year, Hamza?
Now you're asking questions. I'm too old. This is going to date me now. I'm going to say 2006, 2007, perhaps, along those lines, or 2008. And so I said, what do you do? He said, we're starting up an angel network. Never heard of these words. I said, what is it? And so he explained it to me in the most succinct manner. We're talking about a 3-story elevator ride. And by the time we reached the bottom, I said, I'm in. He said, what do you mean you're in? I said, I'm in. I said, this is fantastic. I see all the pains that my family goes through and my friends and their family offices and how investment was being done at that time. It was very haphazard. I have countless number of stories about how many needless mistakes were made and how wealth was being lost as a result. So I said, you're bringing structure to investment? It spoke to my legal side. It spoke to my family side. I said, I'm in. He said, we're not looking to hire. I said, don't hire me. Don't pay me anything. I said, I'll come join you and I'll show you what can be done. I know people who are looking for investment. I know investors. I don't know who needs what and how. I'm still young at this or new at this. And he took a shot and he said, okay, that's fine. It was a no risk scenario for him. You don't pay me, I come learn. Done. And that was the start of my journey. I resigned the next day. I don't even think I turned up to work the next day. I was still in that probation period. I did a handover, I think via the phone, and said, here are the documents, and they were all neatly already stacked in my office. I said, this and this and this, and handed it over to the people that were working with me, and I started my journey. And one of the, I would say, not even, everyone expects, wouldn't that be scary? You studied for years. You're now working as a lawyer, progressing as a lawyer. You're on a track. You're leaving all that security. You immediately stopped any kind of salary you're going to be getting for the next God knows how long. Wouldn't you be scared? And the answer was no. I saw such a niche in the market at the time, such an environment and an ecosystem that didn't exist that needed to be built, and a passion. And that 10, 15-second conversation, which felt like hours in the elevator down, I was more excited during that time than I had been the previous 5-6 years.
You felt more liberated from family office environment and investment decisions that usually the family offices make, or is it like you wanted to get rid of 9 to 5 job?
I think at the time I was still young. 9 to 5 was still great. Actually, it was law firm, right? So it was 9 to 9 back in those days. I think I was enjoying what I was doing to a degree. It was the excitement of not only building something, but changing the way things were done and having a real impact. Not to say that my job wasn't having an impact at all, but I wanted to create an impact in my own way to something that meant something to me that I was familiar with and that I knew I could make a difference in. And quite frankly, the entire investment world was also fascinating to me far before this conversation I had with him. So you're taking my passion of the investment world, you're taking my passion of startups and venture building and all the things that I'd kind of looked up to when I was studying law. And he said, well, we're working with both sides. Come learn, come do, come optimize. And there's no university for that. I mean, now there might be courses on entrepreneurship, but at that time, very few books, very few university courses. So I said, let's go change the way things are done.
You grew up in the family office environment. You saw your father managing wealth and making some decisions. So is it like you observed them making some decisions, and when you met that angel investor, you felt like you can make better investment decisions, or you can invest in some new niches like startups, tech, and all that kind of stuff?
I thought deal flow was always a problem. So this will be a great way for deal flow and to create deal flow within the region that's vetted. But he used the word structure when it came to investments, which is a word that I hadn't really heard. We had our policies and protocols like everybody does for investment. There was no structured way around it. And I think that I saw the opportunity to, of course, when you're young, you think you can always do it better than your parents. So I'd already thought that I was able to do so. And now here was the opportunity to learn even more about how to do it better. But there was always that inkling in the back of my mind that we're still doing things like we did 20, 30, 50 years ago. We need to change things. And with my legal degree and a bit of experience, I was ready to go do that. So I think it was a passion to change what I thought at the time were mistakes that were being made in the investment world from family offices.
Was it rebel against how the investments are actually being made, or like where investments are being made? For example, usually the family office investment portfolio, if we look around, it's around property, it's the real estate, it's the oil, it might be some other traditional investments. So was that rebel against those investment decisions, or was it about around the board structure, like how exactly the decisions are being made?
It's a good question. I think I was rebelling in general from a very, very young age, as you do sometimes. And there's always that one child, right? Some follow the family business, some rebel against it. And so I rebelled against everything I saw. But I think primarily what I'd seen that I was going against the flow of was how investment decisions were made. I think that there's no real easy way to change what investment fields or decisions will be made. So you have we're going to invest into only real estate or real estate related products. To change a family office's view on that is a very personal and private thing and takes many decades and influence from inside the family to create new avenues of industry. I was looking more towards how you firstly, how you find good quality companies, how you assess them, how you direct them, and then, of course, how you make the ultimate decision to invest into them, and then under what terms. Before, it was simply, here's some money, give me some equity, and the negotiation will be, I want 20%. Ooh, I was thinking 15%. Okay, let's shake on 18%. That is not done anymore. I do miss those days. It was easier. But, there had to be better structure, because then you end up with so many issues on both sides. You can have a family office that, because of the way that we were investing, would put in a lot of cash for a little bit of equity and therefore wouldn't see a huge return and say, why am I investing in startups? Well, it wasn't because the company didn't do well. It was because of the way we'd assessed it, the way we'd valued it, and the percentage we got out of the investment that affected our outcome. And it was therefore, if it's negative against that one startup, it would be negative against the SME field, and then the family would stop investing. So I think that, and also on the flip side, sometimes families would take far too much and the entrepreneur would be disenfranchised. And a couple of years in, business is doing very well. He's left with very little. He's working 20 hours a day, hasn't seen his wife or kids for a while. He's going, why am I killing myself? When for, 150,000 dirham investment 2 years ago, when now we're a multi-million dirham company. And so he gets disenfranchised, walks out, and the company collapses. It's bad across the board. So finding that almost arbitration, that methodology that is more mathematical, where people cannot really argue against, and leaving methods for flexibility. I think that's what I want to achieve. I want to achieve that both sides, I always say, contract-wise, if one or both people are happy, something is wrong. Only when both sides are not 100% happy, it means it's a fair deal. Because you can never walk away with everything that you want, and the other side also has everything that they want. And so one way or another, that ship will break at some point.
What is that mathematical equation, Yousef?
Oh, your broad questions. We could be a half an hour on the mathematical equation. So this is what goes now into mathematical equations, and then gut instinct. That starts to open another door into all sorts of things, which we can get to later. So everybody has their own method now. There's a lot of established practices. I don't think that a typical problem a lot of entrepreneurs face here is they expect valuations and situations to be the same as in Europe. Or in the US. We're similar to this company. We've achieved the same in terms of where we are in the development stage. They had a $20 million valuation. So I'm going to say $18 million valuation. It doesn't apply one for one. The US is a 330 million population. They all speak the same language. They all relatively have a similar culture. So when you have a business idea there, you have a market that size.
A bigger market?
Oh, significantly bigger.
Right.
Everyone said, but the Middle East has, Middle East, North Africa is almost the same size, if not more. I would argue that the Arabic we speak in the UAE versus, in the GCC is relatively similar. But even then, lots of differences. Our cultures between Dubai, Ras Al Khaimah, Al Ain is different. Between the UAE and Saudi, fundamentally different, right? So we have a population here and a very varied population. So in the US, 330 million, the majority of them are American. Here, we have an Emirati population, if I'm not mistaken, of about 10%. So already you have a split between, and then they come with their own cultures, or the 90% come with their own cultures and their own ideas and their own background. So one product may not fit the full population we have here. And if you're thinking dollars for donuts, just say Saudi, for example, 30 million population. That's 1/10 the size of the US market. So if I turn to you and say, well, then lower your valuation by 90%, they're not going to do it. But that is the reality. The reality is to go even from Dubai as a market, which is a great launch pad. And that's what companies usually come here to the UAE, launch from Dubai, prove the model here. It's a very international place to be, very forward thinking. Government really supports a lot of things that are happening. So they establish themselves here. They will then move into other markets. And to move a business from, New York to LA, it's not a huge change to fundamentally shift your business depending on what industry and to break into the Saudi market. It's starting your company all over again with new mentalities in Saudi that you're dealing with, new demographics, a new way of speaking, though it might be the same language and roughly the same speech. The way they talk, the way they communicate with each other is grounded in thousands of years of history, which, doing things in the UAE may not exactly translate there. So I think that the numbers, back to your question, do not come with pre-existing ideas of what should be. Do not come with comparisons of the US unless your business is a global business. If you're just starting up, you are not in the same market. You're not with the same people. You have to really think about the genuine impact that you can have on the population here and regionally. I think that also when it comes to numbers, people, there's an old saying from one of my old business partners, also from the Angel Network. He said, doing your projections is like painting, and everybody believes they're Picasso. So whatever you may have in mind will be fundamentally different from what somebody else will see, and somebody else will believe, and somebody else will know. So don't go in hard with your set of numbers. I would say create a set of financials, create a set of expectations, speak to friends and family, maybe even close investors and say, what do you think? Genuinely. I have not yet finished. Be humble. Ask for their advice. Because if you're going to come, you might have a great product, but if you're consistently showing numbers that us who've invested in SMEs over the last 20 years, no, it's not going to work. We'll think you're unrealistic. Your expectations are high and you haven't researched enough. And so we won't tell you this necessarily. We'll come, we'll see, we'll just have made the decision to say, no, thank you very much. It's not for me. And you could speak to 50 investors and fail all 50 times. I would say, get advice. Reach out to people on LinkedIn. People reach out to me on LinkedIn all the time. Yousef, can I have your thoughts on this? Here's my pitch deck. What do you think? Get real feedback before pitching. And the equation, shockingly, isn't purely about comparatives and EBITDA multiples and DCFs that we have out there. A lot of it will also be down, or our tolerance for what you decide to value your company at is the person sitting in front of me. And that's where it then goes into gut, which is another hour conversation.
Interestingly, you mentioned team is the key. The founder who is sitting in front of you will make all the difference for you. So 2 questions. First, I will come towards the valuation. Do you think the companies in the Middle East, in the GCC region, they are overvalued, or startups are making some high expectations and they are comparing themselves with the US in terms of valuation?
Significantly overvalued. Absolutely. And I'll fight with a lot of people on this.
Maybe 90%?
I would say I've probably found one company in the last 2 years that wasn't overvalued.
And if they are also having some sort of existence in the Europe and US, still you feel overvalued?
So we're talking about born and bred, homegrown, young startup companies, right? If you're talking about more mid-sized companies, they actually value themselves lower than a startup would sometimes. Because they have a feel for the market, because they have been established, because they have experience, I'll actually find that the mid-sized companies are more aptly valued. It's not necessarily about even market reach, though that is important. You'll find that they know their worth and they know where they're going and their business plan and growth plan is clear. But I will sometimes find a startup with next to no revenue versus a company with significant revenue and almost similar valuations. That's how unreasonably high the valuations have become for startups, right? I think people are very afraid of losing too much control of their companies. So they say, oh, I'm going to increase my valuation so I maintain control. there are ways to maintain control even if you have 10% in a company. You can still control 100% of it. There are other reasons why people will increase the valuation, because they truly believe in the idea. It becomes their baby, their child. They live and breathe it 24/7. So they say this must be. Everyone believes that their child is going to be the next Beethoven or the next, But the reality is, unfortunately, at that point where they are, people need to remember and be very, very humble. They haven't achieved anything at that stage. And they need to understand that they're asking somebody else for capital. And a big mistake a lot of people make is, well, he's a multimillionaire. What's $100,000 for him? You're not the multimillionaire. You don't know what it means to him. You don't know the sacrifice that investor has put in throughout his life, how many hours he spent away from his kids, how many hours he spent away from his family, how much mental health, physical health, how much stress he's gone through for years to achieve those multi-millions. So you think 100,000, it's 0.1% of his wealth, or even less. For him, that was 6 months that I was grueling and I was missing my child's first steps. You're asking me to give that over to you. And you're asking for that level of faith. And you're coming to me and saying that your first company, when my first company was worth zero, when I built it, the total investment capital was 500,000 dirhams and nothing more, for example. And over 20 years, I built it. You're coming to me saying you have an idea and it's worth $10 million, $20 million. So for a lot of first generation and older investors, you need to really think twice before understanding what you're asking of them. It's not as small as you think. And if you're going to be asking for their time, their blood, their sweat, their tears, right? I would say, put it into perspective. And I would say, ask more than dictate. Whenever you go in speaking to an investor, it's always better to say, here are my rough figures. Here's what we intend to do. What do you think? Here's what I'm planning on doing, my valuation based on X, Y, Z. What do you think? Far too many times I have people walking into the room, dictating. My company's worth this, I'm not moving. I know what I'm worth. Okay, well, that's good for you. I'm not the investor for you. And I guarantee you there's 95% of the other family offices will say the same. Because we need somebody who's not coming in and unable to shift their way of thinking, unable to discuss, to negotiate, to come to the table with somebody, right? And this is what we are. This is our religion. This is our family, or our family background, our history, our culture, is people coming around the table with each other, family bonding, family first, and understanding the other person in the room, and Edib, which is respect for one another. God forbid if any of my siblings would go into a room and say, Dad, this is what I'm doing and this is how you're in or you're out. It's laughable almost. And so how can you come now to my family or my family office and act that you're not even a sibling where we can, forgive that. You're a random stranger. Of course, it's gonna rub us the wrong way. And you're gonna pitch 50 times and you're gonna fail 50 times.
How does the family board works?
Cool.
Like, is it like the elder, then the advisors, or is it elder, then the sons, then the advisors? How does that work?
How does the family board work? It doesn't. That's the first answer. Not all family members are meant to be on the board. Sometimes it will actually save you money. And these I'm roughly translating his words, so he'll have to forgive me. Sometimes it's cheaper to pay certain family members to not be on the board, to not be involved in business decisions, to not be involved in the family business, than it is to have them involved. They can cause more damage and harm there. So I think now you're going into a long kind of discussion here, and I'll try and keep it brief because I've stated my message 100 times with different family offices and succession planning. Just being born to the chairman doesn't mean that you are going to be the chairman. It doesn't mean you have the skill sets. Doesn't mean we're all unique. We all have different fingerprints. And family offices here, majority are first generation. And so we're learning as we go. And as a result, a lot of families and a lot of fathers want to give their children things that they didn't have. So aside from financially, freedom and flexibility to do what they want. So they say, you grow up, you have fun, you enjoy your time, go to university, study what you want. And then when they come back and they say, right, time to join the family office, they're surprised when the kid says, no, Dad, I'm a DJ now.
Mm.
And they're like, how could this have happened? Of course. Because family generations of old, or third, fourth, fifth family generations, etc., will train their children from a young age, get them excited about the family business, have them around board meetings, have them around these social gatherings, educate them towards it. Now then, at the end, if they choose to not join, they have the ability to, but they choose not to. Versus what we've done is, unfortunately, and I use this analogy a few times, it's like throwing money into the ocean and hoping some of it comes back. Once the child has created their own way of life away from the family, it's going to be very, very hard to bring them back. And unfortunately, sometimes the person you bring back is not a person that is capable of running the family business. So family boards, typically the way they are is chairman will be the father, the grandfather, whomever started the business. Well into his 60s, 80s, 90s, however long he's around for, he will still be chairman, and chairman is chairman. And that's our family dynamic. So that is our board dynamic, and that's the way it is. Is it always healthy? No. I think that, as we have problems with politicians sometimes being far too old, we sometimes have the problem with certain chairmen being in the business for too long. And it's very difficult to go to your father or grandfather and say, why don't you relax and retire? He built everything that is around you. All the wealth is as a result of him. How are you supposed to go and approach that? Now, in Europe, it's very easy. They usually have written into the bylaws, once you hit 65, you take more of a passive role or otherwise. There's no bylaws here. We don't have majority of family offices don't have a lot of bylaws. Late into the success of a family office, 10, 20, 30, 40 years, will they sit down? Faisal Holding is a great example of that. I would tell people to look to it, where he brought in some of the best talent in the world, in-house, legal and governance-wise, and it for about a year, maybe 2 years, for them to perfect getting to know the family, getting to know the dynamics, and then to perfect the governance metrics for this family as a unique family. And it took them, I think, as I said, a few years and a lot of investment into this. But that move will create sustainability, will create perfect succession, will create longevity of the investments of the family, et cetera, and will minimize family fights. Inevitably, families fight. Inevitably, families argue. If you have that level of governance, which we don't, which we need to have, then fights are less common. I always say, if it's on paper, you can always just say, these are our family laws, this is our family code. And so when people have that in the back of their head, they're not going to open up their mouth and say, but why this and why that, to open up arguments. They know it's the way it is. And then next generation, eventually it's just, this is the way we do business, like a corporate, more than too close of a family. So I hope that answers some way your question.
We see a lot of family offices in here. Al-Ghurad is one example. They are managing big corporations, and then there are others as well. So do you think some are different than others?
All families are different.
Like in terms of advancement, in terms of structuring, in terms
Absolutely.
of... Yeah.
Yeah. So Faisal Holding, who I gave an example of, their structuring is years ahead. I mean, you've seen, and I don't even have to name, certain families that have separated at the core. Brothers from brothers, fathers from son, who've either gone off on their own direction or been completely ousted. So these things happen. And, unfortunately, doing business with family is not a science, and it can never be a science, but you can mitigate the damage done by setting these core things up, these core elements up. And there's a lot of good talent around the world. And it's something that I also help personally on my free time, mostly with a lot of friends. And they say, this is what happened in our board meeting. And I go, let me come in for 2 weeks and try and, do some damage control. So it's something that I believe heavily in. If in decades ago, I believed heavily in the way we invest, I'm now taking a step back and really focusing heavily on how family dynamics. And ultimately, every family will, second generation will start to think about it, and third generation. And my passion at this stage, as it was for startups, now I think the startup ecosystem is doing very well. It doesn't need me. It doesn't remember my name. It doesn't. I'm very quiet. I sit back. I still see my companies. I still will invest from time to time. I still will advise on boards. But now I'm focusing mostly on family offices, family businesses. I think it's extremely exciting, extremely unique. What I loved about startups is that every startup was different. Every founder was different. Every situation was different. It got my mind active and working and learning. Once you've met up with thousands of companies and founders, etc., you see the pattern and you understand. Now engaging in families, you said, are any families different? From brother and sister, from brother to brother, and their children down will be fundamentally different. Never mind actually different families. It's they're worlds apart. Not just in terms of, and people mistake their approach towards investment. They might have a better approach towards investment, certain families, but the approach towards family and how to deal with family might be flawed. And so as such, you'll be very successful, but behind the scenes, the family is very fragmented. And I'd say that I would rather keep my family close than my pockets full.
Generative AI is changing how the wealth is being managed.
Yeah.
Will it impact the family offices in the GCC?
It depends how advanced the family is, which will depend on how well they take on AI. And it will also depend on how AI progresses going forward. I think that inevitably AI is currently and will be more and more a necessary tool in what we do on a day-to-day basis. So investment has the two arms, like we discussed. It has the numbers and the maths on one side, but it has the gut instinct on the other side. People are saying, well, how are you going to replace that with AI? AI is already able to better distinguish human emotions and facial expressions than other humans are. So it already knows how we feel better than other people do. I think in time, we will have them, AI rather, we will have AI as our, a big portion of our employees. I think AI is dangerous already now with just simply ChatGPT, which is if you know what's happening in the back end out in LA with AI and how far ahead they are. About 55% of all AI advancements and investments are happening there within, I think, a 3-block radius. Another 25 or 30% is happening in Hong Kong, if I'm not mistaken, within 1 or 2 towers, and the rest is scattered across the world. So from what I understand, AI is much further along than ChatGPT is. They're generations ahead already. And just simply ChatGPT has already become, what I've noticed, forget on a family office level, on a human level, has become people's friends, has become people's mentors, has become people's doctors, psychologists, psychiatrists. And so if we are giving that much credibility already to a very simple form of AI, as that advances, we will soon hand over all control to AI. It can do it better and faster. Why not? If you have an employee in the business that is an absolute master at tax law, and you're a lawyer, you know a little bit about it, a tax law question is going to come. You're not going to sit there and research it and go through studies, and it takes years. You're going to give it to that guy who you have on your team and say, what's the answer? Here's the answer. You go back to your client and say, this is what we're going to do. That's how companies run. You lean on talent. Now you have talent that is multifaceted, that is extremely quick to answer, that will also follow the way you think and the way you feel, and you can train it to be more amenable to you, right? And people are just handing over more and more of their thought processes to it. They're handing over more and more of their life decisions to it. People are being misdiagnosed online via ChatGPT, and therefore, instead of taking certain things seriously, are not going to the hospital. They stay at home, and they would suffer from something that they would have gone to the hospital for, but they said, "Oh, ChatGPT said no need," and vice versa. Sometimes ChatGPT is saying, "Go to the hospital." When somebody was, "I'm not going to go. I'm fine. I'm just a bit tired. My arm hurts." No, you're having a heart attack. Go, and it has saved lives. But it is still, at least for now, not fully capable of, I would say, removing certain required human elements from the process. I think that it is dangerous to overuse AI, but at the same time, you cannot overlook it. So there are now a lot of funds that are coming to me and saying, we have consistent, we have transparency with our investors and our LPs. We're consistently updating them, et cetera, and say, Yousef, I don't do any of it. I would have needed a team of 10. AI is now just blasting out announcements and this and everything is covered. All of my almost duties as a GP are being covered by AI, reporting and otherwise. The numbers aren't always right. Ignore the mistakes. Now what the LPs are doing is, that's a lot of information. I put my money here because I want to make 20% back, not because I want to read. They'll get their AI system to shrink it down and summarize it for them, and then they'll take that piece. So basically you have two people not communicating with each other, simply asking each other's AI to decode.
And then they are coming back to each other with the new thought process and even causing more conflict sometimes.
At times, because he hasn't read the document, but he goes, oh, there's a red flag that AI picked up here. Cool, start getting into arguments with or even worse, no one challenges him because this AI came up with a pretty good story. This AI on this side is very happy to listen, and it only has the data that it has been fed. Everyone's happy. But if you had actually spent time on the phone with the person, if you'd actually had more meetings, if you'd actually taken the time to think about and sent something more bite-sized, called up your LPs and said, hey, what do you think of X? You'd find points of view that are not singular. And I think that's one of the other dangerous elements of AI is, before, if I wanted to know something, prior to Google, we had encyclopedias and we had dad and mom and friends. But you would go to the top 10 articles of Google. You'd even then go probably deeper, further, not just Google, but other places. You'd read books to then come up to a conclusion of an answer that you wanted. Now, you get one answer and you stick to it. And this is now reality for us. And so it's going to shape our realities. It's going to shape how we do business. It's going to shape how we think. And it's going to make certain business decisions that are just, quite frankly, wrong. And though AI might be capable of reading human emotions better or expressions better, at this current stage, in 10 years' time, AI will be laughing, but at this current stage, it cannot know what to do with that information in the investment world, in the family world. And if anything, it creates a bigger rift between. So if I'm using as in a family office board and I'm using AI purely to disseminate all the agendas, if the information, et cetera, I don't need to know it. I can go in and I can just say, click next on the screen and read out what's there. Somebody asks me, I don't know what I'm doing. And eventually I'll have such a reliance. Within 5 to 10 years, our teachers will be AI. They can read your emotions at this stage. They can see what you're doing. They can see that the child, for example, they can figure out he has a learning disability or not. They can figure out he's not paying attention. So child, you're staying there, you're trying to teach him maths, child loses attention. Then the teacher will notice very quickly because it's one-to-one and he can read your emotions and say, hey, do you like trains? Kid goes, I love trains. Goes, hey, did you know that this equation is what was used in creation of the train? Really? Was it? How? And then he starts to engage, or the AI rather starts to engage the child through things that they specifically like, and then can start to teach it about that, about physics, about wind resistance, about.
Based on their interest.
Based off their interest. and then drag them into the world of what they were previously ignoring, which was maths, the child might be highly talented at maths, just had no reason to pay attention. So you have these ultimately advanced teachers that will be moving forward, right? And so education will be done by AI. Entertainment's already being moved over to AI. You know, they have logistics, and you of course have then the algos. So you have the algorithms and the trading guys who private equity firms are, you know, starting to rely more and more heavily on AI. And now the humans just verify the AI moves. So instead of having that huge computing power in, you know, across 50 people, you have one AI validated by 5 people. That's it. And so all the hard work could be done by this. So it's unless there are international laws that will restrict AI, which there will not be, not that I can see anytime soon. And if they block it in the US, people are going to be using AI in Dubai, and then Dubai will do very, very well. I think that whoever controls or whichever place is connected to, owns the chain within AI, will be the superpowers going forward in the future. And that's a scary thing.
Yeah. Have you advised to family offices to invest in data centers?
Yes, absolutely. So would I invest? Yes, I would tell them to invest in data centers, because worst case scenario, even if AI doesn't, AI is going to consistently progress. You have a limitless market. Even if AI doesn't go much further, data centers will always be required, and they can be repurposed for almost anything. So I would say yes. If not the whole data center setup itself, the land that has the access to power, that has the ability to build data centers, because then people will come and buy the land. I have 10 people who will spend billions now acquiring land as long as it hits certain parameters, certain size, certain access to electricity and water, and generally connected via road.
What is the maximum profit you got on the portfolio companies you own, or the people or the family offices you advise?
Those are different things. From myself, I would say it's still going. So I still have some of my investment remaining, but from the 70% I exited, I made 7-8x on that. So when that other 25%,
Was that company based in the UAE?
yes, originally,
Wow.
has now expanded globally, 120 countries, etc. I think that one, when the other 25% exits, that could go up to 12, 15, 20% max. Family offices that I've advised, they're very conservative. So a couple of X really max. And even then, not everybody. Most people, they're very happy with 12, 15% year-on-year growth. 20% is amazing.
Super.
Oh yeah.
Super cool.
Because if you're talking about $100 million, if something's going to be making me 20% on that yearly, what else do I need? Making $20 million a year. So I think that it depends on the family office and their risk appetite. But very, very low comparative to tech funds or tech investments.
Are family offices feeling like sort of like missing out? There is sort of like fear of missing out due to the changes happening. Particularly, we were talking about data centers and all that. Investment is shifting in terms of the new types of investments coming in.
I'd love to say yes, but majority no. The younger generations are feeling they're getting left out. The older generations are saying, I have $500 million in the bank. I don't care to risk to lose. They just see it purely as risk. Even if they see other people making 50 million overnight, it's like, but I don't need that. I think the first generation, you have a good example was, God bless him, the owner of, he has had so many opportunities to franchise, to expand, to people have thrown land at him, thrown money at him. And he said, Alhamdulillah, God has provided. I have done this. I've done this very well. And he kept that one location. And that one location is here till today. It provided for his family. It provided for their family. It provided for their health, their education, and so he was happy. And he's passed away now recently.
That's a very good example.
And that's that. And you have a lot of the first generations who are like that. I put my blood, sweat, and tears, and he came probably in the 60s, if I'm not mistaken. Your blood, sweat, and tears, and it's worked, and it worked. And, you know, I think that The scarcity mindset also might have been there, that this works and it's providing, and alhamdulillah, and it keeps providing. Why would I put money into something I don't understand, in a country I don't understand, to do things I don't understand, for maybe 2, 3, 5x versus what I know I'm going to be making next year. I know my business plan says I'm going to make 15%. I'm making 14 to 16% versus this. Why? Scary. For somebody who's been doing the same thing for 40 years, it is scary, and it is no need for a lot of first generations.
I'm a bootstrap founder, Yousef. I built a company from the scratch in the UAE, having significant clientage, earning around $1 million per year. And now I am looking for expansion in the region plus outside of the region, GCC region. Should I approach family office? What is the way I could approach the family office for the expansion?
Always remember that equity is the most expensive form of capital. Right? Not only will you be giving away a percentage of your business, which could be worth multiple folds later on, you could potentially be uniting yourself with somebody that doesn't match the core values of the business and can direct it somewhere. Now, that doesn't happen as often as you think, but you are now accountable to other people as well. I'd say that if you can self-fund family, friends, yourself through the business, I would stick to that first. Then, if you're not a tech company, if debt works to further your agenda of growth, I would lean onto that, because a yearly percentage is going to end up perhaps in the end not as burdensome. Again, it depends on the situation. I'm not saying everybody go get a bank loan. And then finally go to wealth and family offices. Now, if you are to give away equity, I would avoid, to start with, it's not that there's anything wrong with them. You can actually gain a lot. I would avoid personally institutions, funds, even though I have run my own in the past. I would go, if the model works, if you know the right people, I would personally go to families first. They have, depends on the family, they usually will have more time to give. They will have more influence they can bring, and they will be able to lift you up in ways that, let's just say it's very smart capital. And not just smart capital with connectivity. So particularly if you're going into a new market, I would rather team up with a family. If I'm moving to Saudi, I would go team up with a family in Saudi rather than get VC money and go figure it out myself, because they will be able to save you a lot of money in mistakes that you would otherwise make without them. Institutional is also great in that they will teach you processes, procedures, how to run the business properly. And they have also typically a lot of other companies that they've invested into. They've seen, and they're usually SME or industry focused. And so they can bring a lot of knowledge, wealth of knowledge in general to you as a company. So absolutely family offices, but be very, very careful.
How can I team up with the family office?
Ooh. Very broad question. Again, I'll answer it in a very specific way in terms of what is the best approach, I guess, to team up with a family office. In that instance, I would say, firstly, you have to put yourself in their shoes. Number one, you have to understand where they're coming from, what they're doing, their history, what they're like, and get to know a member of the family. If you already know a member of the family, great. And get to know them in a social setting. Get to know the family dynamics, get to know the background. It's very easy for us as people to look at Instagram, look at pictures, and go, wow, this is how things are, etc. You don't know the pain, you don't know the difficulty, you don't know what's behind the scenes. No one ever does. And I would say, get to know the family well. Put yourself second, because it's similar to if you were going to get married, right? You're not going to jump in and go get married. You would get to know the person, you get to know their family, you get to spend a lot of time with them, you'd ask a lot of questions, You'd look for, do they align with my values? And they'll be asking the same questions of you, right? It's not worth making money if I'm investing in somebody whose values are really contradictory to mine, because ultimately, if my name is there, and what I'm saying about thinking from their shoes, they're thinking my name will be attached to this person. Capital aside. And a lot of investors will sometimes invest to have their name attached to something, and they will not invest to avoid their name being attached to something. So think about what it is that you're bringing to them, not other than wealth. They have wealth. Don't come and say, I'm going to make 20x. Good for you. Doesn't bother me. What benefits will you bring to me and my family, to the UAE, to the country here that we're in, to improve the quality of life of the citizens? It's a different way of thinking. When you're trying to impress a venture capital or private equity firm, it's maths, it's numbers, it's I'm going to give you returns, because that is the ultimate goal. When you're approaching a family office, it is I am creating a family relationship. And worst case scenario, if they don't invest, you have a great group of friends and a good family network who become almost like your own. So if you're going in with the idea of, I need cash, even if you end up getting investment, in the long run, it will fail. You're dealing with people, not companies. And it sounds so simple to just say, remember, you're dealing with a human being. But it is fundamentally different from what we've been taught in universities, what we read online, in books, the videos we see, how to raise funding. All the material we get is for approaching VCs. It's not for approaching families. So take your time, be patient, research, understand the person in front of you. And I would say always approach asking for advice, connectivity, rather than money. Because quite frankly, some of the best friends that I've made have been people I've just asked a single question to. I was stuck. I don't know everything in the world. We don't. And so I went over to a friend of mine and said, don't know what to do. And he solved it within 20 seconds. And I gained more value from that 20 seconds than I would have from $1 million investment. It avoided so many mistakes that could have potentially happened and boost revenue over time, significantly more than the investment would have. Because with the investment, I would have kept making mistakes and going down the wrong path. He just was able to. So I'd say advice, connectivity, relationships are worth significantly more than the capital that family offices bring.
Family offices in the GCC, they have no label. It is very difficult to find the contacts, the right person to outreach. What is the best way to figure out the family offices?
I think that there are now a growing number of family offices that are available online, that are making themselves a bit more visible. LinkedIn, I'm seeing more and more articles of, there's a family office summit, I believe. Clever gentleman who really is bringing together families in the right way. He's also posting a lot about this. Approach people like him and say, here's what I'm doing and how do I start? Ask via LinkedIn. What's the worst thing that's going to happen? He's not going to respond. He leaves lists of family offices and even contact details or websites. So there are 10, 20 family offices out there. Start that way. I would say reach out to the ones that are making themselves available, because you don't want to reach out to 20 at the same time because you'll make the same mistake 20 times. Reach out to 2 or 3. Speak to them, get to know them, get comfortable, get familiar. And they do have the details of the investment committee. And you will send off emails and they will ignore you. And you'll send off LinkedIn requests and messages and they may also ignore you. So then you're going to want to get yourself into family office conferences as a guest, as a paid attendee, as a whatever it is, to just sit and learn. Because the second you attend one of these conferences and you're around saying, oh, I have an idea, are you willing to invest? And you keep repeating that 5-10 times, everyone's going to hear you and everyone's going to say, we're here to learn, we're here to grow, we're here to share stories. You are coming in here not aligned with us, you're not reading the room. So I think go in there and ask for advice. I think also get a very strong board behind you. And you'd be very, very shocked how willing and open people are to be on the board of a company. Not always necessarily paid positions, particularly if you're a startup. You can offer equity. or even $1,000 a month. And if that's, again, one or the other or both. And you can reach out to well-known figures that have done well, have them as part of your board, become close with them, learn from them. And usually those people also have family networks behind them. Because if you are, depends on who you target. By target, I mean, it depends on who you're looking for and who you approach. So don't just expect your own networking to yield results. Again and again, I'm going to go back to just listen and learn.
Thank you, Yousef. Do you see in 20 years from now, family offices are changing the way they are making decisions today?
Yes.
I just need short and brief. Like, I don't want you to go into a lot of detail.
You asked me a question this big. You know I'm going to have to. Okay, shortly and briefly, yes. Already in the last 20 years, it's changed fundamentally. I think in the next 20 years, you're spot on. AI will dominate investment making decisions. The problem is it will further distance families and investments, and it will turn family offices almost into VCs themselves. So you will find probably the death of the family office investment environment to startups and the growth of the family office VCs because of AI and because of second, third generation education, the way the world's going. So I don't know if it'll be better or worse, but I think we still need to always have our gut instinct and train that as much as possible to ensure we don't lose out on our core values that make us human.
Do you think they will be diversifying more their portfolio side of things, or will it be the way they are making decisions?
Yes, absolutely. First generation will not. Second generation will maintain and start to. Third generation will either blow the family wealth or start to diversify it. I think now as well, the younger generation are starting to learn a lot more across the field. They're growing up with AI. They're growing up with a lot more experience and a lot more knowledge. So they are exposed to a lot more fields of industry. I think that inevitably, if nothing else changes, simply the next generation will expand. And that's what I'm starting to see with a lot of family offices. There will be one family member who says, I want to start focusing on tech. A family that never would, and would push family, and after a certain number of years would be given 0.5% of the family wealth to go manage and invest in tech. That division has now, some of these guys have started 10 years ago. Those divisions are now growing to be a good chunk of revenue for the family, and they're starting to move more capital there. So I think if nothing more than the handing over the next generation, I think the exposure, AI, the way the UAE is now getting even more plugged in internationally, it's almost a must at this stage, because no market stays the same forever. We cannot just say, I'm going to be focusing 100% of my money in real estate for the rest of my life, because the market will crash and you'll be heavily exposed. And I think the market crashes that have happened around the world have started to wake families up to, you need to diversify if you haven't already.
It is being fantasized being born in the family office, surrounded by wealth, and seeing a lot of investment decisions every day. What if we take off the label, all the labels from Yousef Hamza? Who will it be beneath everything?
So first, be careful what you wish for. That fantasy that you were talking about is not always the best thing that can happen to certain people. Certain families, certain expectations, certain obligations. You have the freedom to do what you want, but in certain families, you cannot take a sip of water without permission. So I would say, everyone says would love to be that, and look at that. As I said, what's out here is not always what's behind here. So Yousef Hamza, without the labels, I've never really had a label to start with. I think that's also upset my father immensely. Because first son was lawyer for a decade and so on, and then went into manufacturing, and the standard responsible first son. Second child is what you'd expect the second child to be, is just go out there and figure things out. And I'll be a lawyer, and I'll go into setting up a brand new wing of this, or trying to convince the family to move to that, and going to SMEs, investing into biotech, healthcare, tech, restaurants, all sorts of things. And so I think that for me, what has shaped my life is never taking things at face value. I think if somebody has approached me saying this is the way the world is, I will not necessarily accept it. I will see the world the way I wish it to be and work towards that. And that's what made the decision, or that's what helped me make that decision in the elevator. That's what helped me invest into certain companies that have now done very well. That's what helps me be who I am today. Question everything. Trust but verify. And if you're going into life without one very specific goal, and you are open to what can come, you'll find that God throws a lot more opportunities at you than you expect. Because if you can only see one thing, whatever it is, you miss everything else. So if you think things should be done differently, do it. And is it going to be sacrifice? Absolutely. You started your own company. I'm sure there were many nights where you go home and just question yourself and say, why have I done this? What am I doing to myself? Why didn't I stay with my job? But now you're sitting here going, thank God I stuck with it. I am happier than I've ever been. So you can never get something for nothing. Sacrifice will be there. I was speaking to an entrepreneur yesterday who has put in her entire lifeblood into a company and has suffered immensely for it. But knowing the company and knowing her drive, she wants to help a lot of people, and people notice that. And now when she's down on her luck, those people around her are stepping up to help her. She hadn't asked. She just wanted to change things for the better.
It's a give and take, and whatever they did is coming back to them.
Yes. And she made a lot of good friends, and she had a great, beautiful ambition that wasn't focused on, I need to make 2x. Right? 2x is not going to make you happier. 5x is not going to make you happier. There's a law of diminishing returns. I think Harvard study had done that anything beyond $100,000 a year is not going to make you significantly happier. Now, these stats were for the US. Every country has different minimums, but after a certain point of wealth,
it is just numbers adding up.
It doesn't make you like diminishing returns.
Yes.
Zero to that $100,000 will be huge. Beyond that, it starts to curve off very quickly.
Right.
So I would say we all, when we were kids, had this goal, this ideal of what we wanted to do. May have changed, but we all know, I have that feeling that always drags us saying, I should be doing this. Absolutely nothing stops you. Put whatever free time you have into, how many people have that dream but are not reading books about it or around it, or other people's life stories, or going to the events what they should have gone to because they got home, they're tired. Take those extra hours of the day that you have and pump it into the thing that you love and the thing that you know you should be doing. And the more you think about it, the more you want it, the more you'll talk about it with people around you, and you'd be surprised. Just a one conversation with one friend who you didn't think had anything to do with your dream would end potentially in the starting and growing and success of your company. Where you go, oh, I have a friend. Oh, I didn't know you were interested in orphanages. I have a friend. Speak to him. And that one connection could then change your life. So actively speak out loud about what you want to people. Actively research it. Actively follow that goal. And give it a try. Not everyone is successful. For each success, there are hundreds of failures. But at least either way, you've learned something, and you can go back and say, I've tried. I've given it my best. I've given it a shot. I've learned. And either next time I'll do it better, or it's not for me. I can put that to rest and I can go focus on other things.
It was so deep conversation with you, Yousef. Really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. As always, my pleasure.